Okay, here we are, and we are about to start. Today we are going to discuss the games between Ding Liren and Gukesh, as well as discuss how this match affects the future of chess, at least in the nearby perspective. Okay, so let's first answer. Let me answer your question. When is my next over-the-board tournament? Well, I don't know actually, because I wanted to play in December, but it seems that there is no tournament for December that suit my needs with international master norm. So that's why I don't know. Maybe there will be one in January or February. At least their organizers told me that they will notify me once they have a schedule. Okay, so could I put the link of the page? Which link? Okay. Do you know how to participate in the World Chess Championship? I say this because of what you put in the explanation. Okay, so what did I put in the explanation? How to participate in the World Chess Championship? Well, in order to participate in the match between the current world champion and the challenger, you need to become a challenger. And to become a challenger, you need to win the candidates tournament. And there are several factors, several reasons which may allow you to participate in this candidate tournament. But, well, I think that people who are likely to participate in this candidate tournament are not going to attend my webinars because usually, well, because they are actually much stronger than me. But you can participate in World Rapid or Blitz Championship. Well, such event happens, Rapid and Blitz, yeah. So such event happens every year. And if it happens in your country, then you can talk to your chess federation president and suggest your and tell him that you would like to participate. Probably, usually a federation, a chess federation that conducts such an event has a right to put a few chess players. It's a kind of a wild card, and they can do it in several ways. First of all, they can allow youngsters, so for example, some very young prodigies to participate, even if they do not perform well, even if they are much weaker than the average player of such a tournament. Or there can be the second way to participate. You can pay money, and it costs a lot and still participate. But usually it's only allowed for chess players who belong to the federation that conducts this event. So, for example, when I was visiting as a spectator um, World Blitz Rapid and Blitz Championship in Kazakhstan. I saw a lot of weak Kazakh players in the tournament. However, they were not, according to the regulations, were not allowed to participate, but they did participate because their chess federation allowed them and they could use these wildcard slots. Okay, so good to hear that. So that there are some online tournaments in Spain for money where you don't have to pay. Okay, that's nice. Can you provide us the link to these tournaments where everyone can pay and get money? Well, I'm not sure I'm going to participate because usually there are so many strong players and there is no chance to get a prize. And of course, because it's online, there are a lot of cheaters. Okay, Fine. So let's start. If you remember, there was a homework. So here they wanted to play Rook F8, and the question was how to withstand. Well, there are a lot of ways to play. Even Bishop B7 was okay. King H7 was a good move. In the game, it was Knight G5. Why Knight G5? Because this knight covers the F7 square too, and cannot be captured with the bishop, which is a very important thing. So now Rook F8, Rook F8. Well, it's even possible to play King H7 and not take. For example, Bishop D6, Rook goes to C6, Rook E8, Queen E8, Rook F8, Queen D7, and it's not clear how White can win with these pieces. But I think Black played even in a better way. They decided to sacrifice the Queen because then they have a fortress. So sometimes you can sacrifice material in order to make a fortress. Well, b5, then their king goes there, and what they need to do is just to stay and wait. They can make rook moves, or the king moves, or even the bishop moves or the knight moves. So everything will be protected. And there is no way White can progress. So sometimes you can sacrifice the material if then you see that you can withstand the attack, for example, by doing fortress. The main problem is this bishop, because the bishop cannot attack because all the squares on this diagonal are occupied, are attacked with our pieces, not g6, of course, but these are, and the bishop cannot move there. And the queen cannot do anything alone because everything is protected. Well, maybe in this position, queen b1 could make sense to add pressure, but then b5 or even just b takes a5, tying the queen down to the a pawn. Yeah, there is a possibility of a bishop sacrifice on d5, but e6 is still protected enough times, so there is no tactical strike anyway. And after bishop d5, if you don't get a compensation immediately, you may even lose because these three pieces are more than a queen. Okay, let's continue. The next one is this. Well, what do we have in this position? How to draw the game? This is still winning. So king e3 was played, but this is still winning for black, and they should play knight e6, then doing this, and then advancing their pawns with check. But in the game, after king e3, they decided to play rook a2, which is a logical move because it seems that they threatened checkmate. Well, it's not a checkmate, actually, but at least they threatened something. They threatened the bishop. Uh, this is how black thought that they are winning. But here, white missed a tactical strike. Its bishop takes e4, sacrificing the bishop. Pawn takes e4, and if you decide to take, you lose, right? King moves here, rook e4, or king moves there, rook e4. Well, if you play this move, you are likely to lose too, because after this, rook a3, the king moves away, the rook is lost. If you keep repeating checks, let's say it's just knight e6 and you still lose because there is a pawn. If there is no pawn, if it's only rook and knight versus rook, it is a draw, but white has to play accurately and has to wait for 50 moves more. But here, they don't really have to take this pawn. They can play rook e5. And after king takes e5, it is a stalemate. Okay, black may not capture this rook, right? So they can move the king. But after that, the rook on e4 is no longer attacked by the king, and the rook e2 is just a blunder, which leads to a draw. So probably knight e6, rook h4, and after 30 moves more, players agreed to a draw in this position. But you should remember that a rook and knight never wins against a rook if a weaker player plays properly. Bishop and rook may allow one player to defeat the other one. Okay, fine. So actually, I don't know why we have just a few participants today, but let's continue. What we're going to discuss today we are going to discuss the games between Gukesh and Ding Liren. So we will quickly go through the boring ones, and but so we are going to um, quickly go through the boring games and try to analyze the games 5 and 6, which are relatively new. So if you didn't watch them, and if you don't have time to follow this match, then this webinar is a good opportunity for you to get familiar what is going on in this match, and well, you probably can evaluate chances. I actually think that um, that Gukesh is likely to win. Okay, so those of you who usually participated in this webinar by Zoom, but couldn't join today, so this is a link for you. I published it on YouTube, so if you want to join Zoom, that's fine. This is actually my recommendation. Join Zoom. Well, okay, I actually think that Gukesh may win, but Ding Liren is actually a very strong player anyway. Okay, the first game. So it started with this move, with e4, e6, d4, and in that game, Ding actually won. So knight c3 is definitely the strongest continuation. This is how I play myself. Well, this is quite a famous variation. It's, well, Stanitz variation. So another move is this. This is a Rubinstein variation. And Rubinstein is known as a way for black to draw the game. But there is no chance to play for a win in such a case. It's either white wins or it's a draw. But knight f6, this is what may allow players to play for 3 results. So white can win, most likely it can be a draw, or black can win. In that game, it was black. So knight fd7, here knight c2, which is quite uncommon and is not considered to be dangerous for black. Well, I myself play this, and bishop e3 trying to control the d4 square. So this is probably the most competitive line. But knight ce2, and what does it mean? When a grandmaster in a world championship match plays this, I mean, not a popular move, then he brought the attention of people all over the world to this exact variation. And since this moment, they are analyzing it. For example, if Gukesh did win this game, people would consider this line to be a really a good one and would start playing knight c2. Same situation happened when Magnus Carlsen was playing against Fabiano Caruana, and Fabiano was playing Sveshnikov Sicilian, and Magnus played knight d5. After that, knight d5 became the main move because Magnus played perfectly well. Here with knight c to e2, it's unlikely to happen because black wins. But now the modern tendency will change, and people who didn't like this move, who didn't like this variation and didn't like this position for black, will now get more opportunities how to defeat. And probably the white players are likely to change their repertoire from knight c2 to just ordinary knight f3. Okay, so anyway, both lines are playable until you reach 2400. After that, you have to think. I think actually it's still playable. But usually with white pieces, we prefer to play for a win. So what's the main idea of this variation? The main idea is to be able to build a pawn chain. So a5 was a kind of, it's not a novelty, but this is a relatively rare move. So typically it's this, or it's bishop e7. Uh, with the idea to undermine the center. Here, a5, it's a very nice idea, and if such position appears in other games, a5 is more likely to be played because people are watching, they're following what happens in the World Chess Championship match. And if they see that this idea worked well and a5 here worked well, they are likely to use it. Okay, yeah, thanks for letting me know. He spent 30 minutes here. Probably he was guessing. Well, he was not guessing. He was choosing which move to play. Or maybe he just want Gukesh to realize that Ding is not well prepared. Maybe he just wanted to demonstrate that he is not prepared. So that's why he plays a5 occasionally, but he doesn't play. He doesn't know what to play then. But it seems to me that Ding here was prepared. And Ding is actually not a French defense player at all. He plays it occasionally. However, his second, Richard Rappert, is a French defense player. So probably it was Rappert who suggested playing French. Okay, so knight f3, a4. Well, it's a good move too. Bishop a3. G4. Well, typically G4 is what we have to play with the idea of doing F5. And what that was absolutely right. But it didn't work so well against this strategy, against A5, A4, and the pressure here. So Queen A5, well, the idea is obvious, to pin and at a certain moment to capture on D4. However, such a move, well, to play a3 also, then capture. But the way that Ding played it didn't work perfectly. So bishop g2, he played a3. That was definitely a mistake because after b3, what's the purpose? Maybe he wanted this, but then it's b4 first, and one of the knight goes there. Well, which knight? I think this knight, because this knight has to protect there. For example, after queen goes there, well, actually, it's fine. You can take with a queen, and c3 is protected. I do play a similar position. Let me show you. So f4, c5, knight f3, knight c3, bishop e3, queen b6. This is the most popular move. It's not considered to be a good move, but it's popular. Knight a4, queen a5, c3, he takes, the pawn is pinned. I have to play b4, queen goes back, and then I take here. Usually here black reacts with this, then I play a3. A takes b4, a takes b4. So what do we have? Both bishops are restricted. One, the light squared one with a pawn on a6, the dark squared one with the pawn on b4, and it's really hard for black to find moves while white has a clear plan. So bishop d3, a rook lift and attack, also g4 f5 or just f5 immediately. Also, even such ideas like knight b5 and invasion on the queen side are playable. So, but the position that Ding got was better. So bishop e3, bishop e3, and bishop e7 and queen a5. So it was better. Because the pawn was already on a3. We will continue with this analysis a little later, but first of all, I would like to talk about g4. So typically, it's d takes c5 here. So d takes c5, castle, and they use the d4 square in order to improve one of their knights. Then bishop d3. Well, you may ask me, Victor, what's the purpose of this bishop move they just take? Yes, in French defense they can take, but this bishop isn't as good as the enemy knight. So because the enemy bishop, light squared bishop, is really bad, we can allow them to exchange the knight for the bishop, and it's still fine. Okay, so g4. Well, a common move, but it seems that White was completely unprepared for this variation. He knew that g4, a5 are most common ideas, but he didn't knew the right moment to play them. So queen a5, bishop g2, a3. Well, a3 shows that Ding either forgets or blunders. In this position, b5 should be played with b4 idea. For example, d takes c5, and he doesn't take back immediately, but pushes b4. So knight goes there, And let's say bishop b7 defending everything, c5 is under attack. So what may happen after that? Take, knight d4. Well, it's fine. There is a check here, first of all. Well, and you can also take. So if you take, they take. Check. If bishop f2, it's no. If bishop f2, it's I think bishop. Well, c2 works, but I like this move too. And after that, queen c5. So if they want to save the knight, they are likely to play this move. But then c takes b2. And looks like this bishop is not really doing much, but the rook is tied down for the pawn. So it's a bishop for two pawns, but it seems that because the pawn is already on b2 and is already protected, black is better. So b5 is the main plan, and this is what Ding had to remember if he decided to play this exact variation. But I think he wasn't well prepared for knight c2 variation. Okay, anyway, he blundered at b3, now b4, and his position doesn't look good. Well, comparing to my variation, the pawn is already on a3, and it's a kind of achievement for black, but not a huge achievement. So knight b6. Well, and this knight is on f3, not on a4, where I usually have it. And if that happened, I would capture and then play knight f5, so it would work well. But this time, black has more opportunities. Still, knight b5 should be played here. Queen d8, and let's get bishop to where it should be. Anyway, castle, knight c4, bishop goes there. And black had a counterplay on this side, knight b2. This is a weakness. And because of the pawn on e3, b2 is a very good square, which stops some enemy pieces maneuvering. Okay, so thanks. Thanks, John, for your explanation. There are, well, not regional. I think there are a lot of. Okay, so if you are already a 2500 player, you may participate in World Rapid and Bliss Chess Championship. Last time it was about you have to pay $100 or something like that if you are if either so if you have a rating of 2500, it can be either a blitz rating, rapid rating, or standard rating. But if you are not 2500, you have to persuade your chess federation to let you participate there. Yes, that can be done with dozens of regional tournaments. And they are not online, of course. They are over the board. You have to learn how to play over the board. And, well, no, if you play online, you usually do not qualify for any over the board achievements or trophies. Okay, so let's continue. Queen e3. Well, it's okay. It's a normal move. They protect the pawn and rook c8, pressure, and finally queen c4. However, not with the idea of capturing this pawn. So what happened in the game? f5. Well, you see, so Gukesh does a very simple template. He does g4 and d5. That's absolutely right from a strategic point of view. But this position has a lot of difference, and black already attacks the queen side, so it's too late to play f5. Instead, he'd better look for defensive moves like that. So queen a2 doesn't work because then the queen can hardly escape from there, and the pawn on a3 is lost. So maybe this, but queen f3, and now I'm going to play this. Here you may suggest knight d2, but after queen e2, it's actually a pin, and you may even lose the knight. And if queen d3, it's still bishop f1. So f5 is a good idea, and it would work if only white could have several extra templates. Okay, so bishop c1 and not queen a2 in this position. Again, if queen a2, this time it's f6. F6, so, well, so if the bishop goes there, it's even knight f5. Take e6. How does it work? Well, then after g takes f5, it is a pin, and the king is exposed because it's not castled yet. For example, this. Then take here, they take, we take here. Well, can they play anything else? No, they cannot defend it. So bishop goes there, and e7 works because after bishop e7, just double, and they have to defend like that, but this provides white with a counterplay. So queen e2 was a mistake. Instead, it was queen d3, queen e1, and bishop g5. Now white is in the trouble. So rook c2, the rook is protected. However, queen can go to c4 and then capture there. But he plays rook c4 move, threatening to take on d4 and threatening to take on c2. It was actually better. Another possibility is to castle just, but rook c4 seems like a move which allows black to play for win. h4, bishop f4. And queen b1 trying to defend. But at least they lose a pawn like that. Yeah, so that was the key idea, that this pawn supports the knight there, and the knight does prevents a lot of things that white can do. Now their queen side is ruined, and they didn't achieve anything on the king side. Take. This is where he plays a mistake. Well, I understand why he took with this. He wanted probably to keep kind of a pawn chain and defend d5, but that was a mistake. Instead, if he did that move, now knight e2, queen e5, knight e4, queen e4, bishop c5, he can take there, and d5 is protected. For example, like that, knight c4, then everything is fine. But if he takes with a pawn like he did, knight e2, queen e5, knight e4, this, and now, for example, it could be bishop c5 again, and if queen g4, now rook f3 would work better. Also, queen c2 is a very good move in this position, threatening queen f2, because after bishop c5, it's not possible to castle. And comparing to this position, when he could take with the bishop, the difference is that this time, okay, let them play queen f2, but what this queen is attacking here? So white doesn't get a compensation for the pawn, for that pawn that he loses on e5. Okay, fine. So this is what happened, queen c2 and queen c4, not taking on g4, right? Because once he takes on g4, it's bishop c5 and queen f2. So queen c4 is the best. And then this game no longer deserves our attention because it's completely winning for black. So there was an exchange. Black is 2 pawns up, and the rest is just pure technique. e5 is a very good move because it activates the bishop. So bishop takes, queen takes with a check, bishop g2, and bishop f5. If only this bishop comes to e4, the game is over. So bishop g3, bishop comes to e4, and that's it. They played a few more moves, but I'm sure you watched them. If not, then they don't actually deserve attention, and the a3 pawn becomes a pass pawn. So this is where the game was already lost, but Gukesh kept playing. So this is where he resigned. Well, probably he needs to sacrifice the queen like that, hoping for this, but queen f2, intermediate check, and then the queen is lost. So how this game affects the chess world? Well, first of all, it brings more attention to French, and people will keep playing French because, well, Ding played it successfully once. He drew in the other game in French defense, so that's why French defense may become popular. A5 move will deserve a lot of attention, and most likely, if this position appears, people will stick to A5 move because with this move, Ding successfully won. And they don't actually pay attention uh, to the reason why exactly Ding won. Did he win because of mistakes of white, or did he win because A5 is a really good move? Well, of course, here he won the game because of mistakes by Gukesh, who did play G4 and F5 instead of retreating the bishop back from G2 to F1. Okay, fine. The second example, the second game, the game ended in a draw. So this game was actually boring. That's why we are not going to focus on it a lot. Here I play c3 and then I play bishop g5, and I think it's more interesting to play because there are a lot of specific lines where black may initiate the attack on the king. White has some queenside attack and some counterplay in the center. Anyway, knight c3. So knight c3, a6. It's a useful move. The bishop may escape. a4. Another useful move for the bishop to get escape to a2 in case of knight a5, for example. Right now, knight a5 is not a threat because e5 pawn is under attack. So d6. Now knight a5 becomes a threat. So bishop g5 is still interesting. But I do not prefer to combine this idea with the knight being already on c3, because this knight is very often required on d2 to protect another knight on f3, because they can do the same, bishop g4. Castle, h6, now bishop is not coming there. Okay, the question for you guys, what's your opinion regarding h3 in this position? Such a move wasn't played, but what do you think? Is it a good move or not? It looks risky, right? Well, it's a target for black. Probably Shahred may answer because, well, he says it's his favorite opening. Okay. So probably you know what people typically do when h3 is played on the board. There are sacrifices. This is what Brian suggests. Which exact? Because bishop h3 right now seems like just a blunder. Okay, so castle queenside and then attack. I actually g5, forget about castling exactly. G4, and then it opens the G file. So what you should remember is that you shouldn't play H3 if you see that your opponent is not castled. If he is castled, then H3 is fine, because then G4, G5 doesn't allow him to take advantage of the open file and attack your king. So bishop E3, a very specific move. One important thing to remember is that in the World Chess Championship match, chess players are, well, they both are trying to play for a win, actually. Not in every game, but in most of their games, they are trying to play for a win. And what they are doing is to try to get imbalanced positions in order to make it more complicated, even if it's slightly worse. But because of better understanding of this imbalanced position, they may have some chances to play for a win, to confuse their opponents. So bishop e3, bishop e6. Well, what can I say? I would love to see the knight there. White played a5, which is a very specific move too. It does make sense because it grabs space, but at the same time, there are a lot of nuances. This move actually doesn't work because of knight d5. And then what? So how do you play? If you cannot take with a knight, right? So you can take with the bishop, but then it's d4. And the knight is required to control the center. For example, d takes, knight takes, and if knight takes there, then what? Can we take with the bishop? Maybe with the queen too? Yeah, this knight is kind of restricted, so this pawn is doesn't actually even matter. Okay, so if knight a5, then just c3 works, right? But before doing c3, let's do this. Let's say queen takes, bishop takes, queen takes, or pawn takes, doesn't matter, and then c3, because if the bishop moves, we can capture there. Fine. Let's continue. So bishop c4, d takes c4, castle. Yeah, we can fork the bishop and knight. Castle. Yeah, actually, that was a good point. So, well, I thought that actually, instead of doing this move, it was better just to take my 3. With knight g4. No, if you do knight g4, it's bishop c5. So I thought that it's better to play this move, and well, it's a weird pawn structure. It's a completely imbalanced position, but it looks weird. How the game could continue? For example, castle, castle, then what? Knight h4. No, then knight e4. So I would prefer this position for black because of the pawn structure. There is one more idea. So knight b8, let's say, then it's c5, undermining the pawn on e5, undermining the pawn on d6 in order to capture the e5. But, well, in my opinion, the control over these and these files do not provide white with a full compensation for such a terrible pawn structure. Maybe Gukesh had some other ideas in mind. So b3, well, white seems to be better, but just very little, and he was unable to realize this advantage. So this rook takes because the other rook has to protect on the a5. Well, the knight cannot take because of this. Well, rook c1. Well, how white is better in this position if they have to play such moves? Knight d4. Well, a rook lift with the idea to double could make sense. But it seems that here both players already agreed to a draw. I mean, they were ready to draw the game. None of them had any advantage, and the position became simple. Well, not simple for us, for example, but simple for such strong grandmasters like Ding and Gukesh Dommaraju. So, okay, so do you know where? Okay, well, I'm not sure if you can get any subsidy, well, any material help to participate in the tournament. So I knew there was a program for seniors, that some strong chess players who are already seniors, who had a great impact in the chess, in the world of chess. They were granted with some amount, but I have no ideas about any other kind of financial help from FIDE. Okay, rook fd8, f3, well, and the rest is not important for us. Here, maybe h4 to fix the pawns there, and maybe try to play for a win because it stops the black's counterattack. Knight h7 now. no longer makes sense. Maybe knight h7 with the idea of f5, but it's still unlikely to work, even if they play f5, because these pawns are now the objects of the attack. So knight e2 was played, and they, well, this is where they just repeated the position and agreed to a draw. No, no, of course. Seniors, I consider it people over 55. Okay, so the second game wasn't interesting, but the third was. Gukesh was playing with white pieces and he was playing for win. What did we have here? We had Queen's Gambit and the Carlsbad pawn structure. Actually, this position is considered with no advantage for white at all, but he somehow managed to win. Again, will it affect the current tendencies? No, unlikely. Why? Because people know that knight f3 doesn't provide white with any advantage, and the only possible way to play Carlsbad is to actually play it in this way. So then queen goes there to stop this move, and then the idea is to play f3, e4. So f3, then bishop e3. Well, first bishop goes to g5, f3, e3, bishop d3, knight e2, exactly like Kasparov showed. And this is considered to be favorable for white. But with knight f3, it's a well-known draw, and this game only proved it. White didn't have any advantage. He did create some complications, but Ding was able to solve everything successfully. And actually, he did solve just a few things, stopped him from drawing this game. So g6 to chase the queen away. H3, well, a very specific move, probably to prove that the position of the bishop on a5 is unstable. Well, it was possible to play some natural moves, not obligatory bishop f5. Bishop f5 is actually the most popular move, and it was even Nepomniachtchi playing such a move against Kramnik. Yeah, there are a lot of strong players playing it. What else can be done? This. Or just a5. Well, I like a5 because after queen b3, a4, even at the cost of a sacrifice, can be played. So h3, bishop f5, it's fine. So queen goes to b3. Queen b6, again, completely following the main line. Well, queen c7 doesn't look good because of this specific move, bishop f4. Well, it's not the best move, but after queen takes, it's queen b7 and they lose a rook. However, black could have some compensation, for example, in this variation. And if you take on e8, it's queen c7 and the queen is trapped. So develop your bishop, castle, and move the knight out to be able to attack the enemy queen with your rook here. So queen b6 is very common. So g4. Well, how to play? Moving the bishop is probably one of the possibilities. So bishop e4, bishop g2, then h6 to stop g5, and it should be equal. Well, if you think that this is a problem, don't worry, because first of all, you can take hero with a knight. White gets a bishop pair, but look at these bishops, especially the one on g2, which is not doing anything. Bishop e6 was also a possibility. The bishop becomes bad, but it's for a while, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't participate in the game. It does, and later this pawn can be undermined. So this move has a lot of prospects. So instead, queen b3 was played, and it was logical too. Bishop c2. So bishop e4, and it's equal. But bishop c2, attacking the pawn. Stonewall attack. Okay, so, well, it does make sense if you don't have a bishop on c1. If you already exchanged these bishops, this bishop, then I would suggest to transpose to stone wall. Black can also transpose to a stone wall in some variations. Well, I remember Magnus Carlsen playing bishop g5, bishop f6, then knight e5 and f4. Well, in one of the lines of Queen's Gambit. Okay, bishop f4. Uh, h5 is good. Rook g1, this. Knight bd7 is a novelty here, but bishop b3 doesn't look good. Actually, the question for you as a homework is, what if bishop takes b3 in this position? So your task will be to answer. It's a wrong move, definitely, and white gets advantage in such a case. So that's why h5. Rook g8, a very nice move. What does this move do? This move allows us to play g5 and get the bishop back to h7. In case if they, for example, consider rook c1. g5. So if they take, we take, and this is a weakness. If they play bishop move, then we can go there at the very least, but also we can retreat further. For example, f3, and then we can retreat to h7. So that's why Gukesh played g5. Knight h5, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes there, and this move is still fine. Well, f3 to get the king there, to control e4, and to be ready to play e4 with his pawn. Knight g7 to improve the knight, because these squares are not available for the knight, so he goes there. Well, bishop g3, because the bishop is hanging. And this is where Ding started making mistakes. So until this moment, he played really well, and we can even say that his position is slightly better, just very little. So what do you think? What black should be doing? And black definitely shouldn't forget about something like that and something like that. These ideas can be combined together, or they can be done separately. He had to go knight f5, but how does knight f5 work? So let's say bishop here, and then I'm doing e4. Now it seems to be better for white, because the knight becomes the object of the attack and the bishop is restricted. Because if I only play e4 and then play rook c1, you're in trouble. So e4, d takes, f takes, the knight moves, and then rook c1 is coming, so you may lose your bishop on c2. So it's not knight f5. He had to go knight e6. Well, yeah, knight e6 makes sense, but if knight e6... Well, if knight is, it's this, and after this, it's still e4. So take, bishop goes there, but it's still the object of a discovered attack, and I have the center. For example, how to continue? Well, bishop f2, let's say, where this bishop goes, probably there. But g5 is protected, and with d5, I don't know either now, well, actually maybe now, because once you take, I take, this knight goes there, maybe knight b5 can be played. So it seems very good for white, there is some initiative. So definitely not this. Instead, it's bishop e7. How does bishop e7 works? Well, if this time they play this move, then bishop f5 back, e4, and bishop goes to e6. So everything is protected and this is hanging. If, let's say, okay, so yeah, it's bishop e7. So what happens then? Well, bishop e7, rook c1 doesn't work. Maybe e4 to close this bishop works. If so, it's bishop g5. And then what? If now rook c1, trying to trap it, it's bishop takes d2, king takes d2, and the bishop escapes. And after this move, instead of just taking, you can play there. So you already won a pawn, so you can sacrifice here. But look at how your pieces are located now. You have two bishops in open position, and you can always capture on g3. Okay, so rook h5, that was a mistake. So either maybe some miscalculation, or he didn't have enough experience here. I don't know, e4. And what I also didn't like in this game is that Ding spent too much time. Yeah, so if you want to work on chess.com, you'd better apply yourself because, well, I'm not a person affiliated with chess.com. So, well, I'm listed as a coach there, but it still means that I'm working independently on chess.com. Okay. Mm, and also you have to be eligible to work for chess.com. I don't know if they accept Europeans. They definitely accept Americans and Canadians. Not sure about Europeans. Probably yes, because they have Chessable, and the Chessable office works from Barcelona. No, I don't have such a person to talk about it. I don't have such contacts. Okay. Well, you just have to apply, and if you suit to one of these jobs, then they will respond. So d takes e4, that was a mistake. Knight e6 would help. If rook c1, it's knight d4. However, after bishop f2, it's hanging, and this is hanging too. But instead, bishop c5. So if now bishop takes, it's bishop takes there, and the rook is under attack. If rook g2, let's say, then there was a tactical strike with knight f3, and then this pinning. So knight takes, pawn takes, and there would be a compensation. So f6, and there are too many pawns for the bishop. Most likely that would offer a draw for black, but instead he played d takes e4, which was a weak move, and only then he played knight e6. So rook c1, he did this, and so, well, this time he cannot take on a4 already because he took already on e4. And well, he in the previous variation, he could sacrifice the knight on f3 and then take on e4. This time there is no purpose of knight f3 at all. So bishop g7 and knight e2, exchanging the knight, trying to trap the bishop. The knight is under attack, so knight b3, but he loses a piece. Well, in this position, there is nothing they can do to save. He loses a piece. After that, the game is over. So the only way to avoid it, even with this weird move rook h5, was to play knight e6 right away, attacking there. And after rook c1, knight d4, this, and the key idea here is to sacrifice on f3, and then take on e4, escaping with a bishop. So, but after this and this, there is no sacrifice on f3, and the whole idea doesn't make sense. Then the bishop is trapped on c2. So only because of that, Ding lost the game. Again, the rest is not important. It's just a pure technique. Here, Ding was very low on time and quickly lost. So, well, it's already over. There was no chance him to fight for a draw. Then bishop h3, and this is where he he loses the exchange and he is a rook down. So even doesn't matter how many pawns black has as a compensation. So f5, bishop f4, rook h5. He tried to make this move and lost on time. How does it work? So I mean, how does he lose here? Just bishop f5, and if he takes here, he loses. If he takes there, then bishop d7, intermediate check, and then you take the rook. Okay, fine. So the bishop was on c2 and it was stuck, and Dinga spent a lot of time, so he had enough time to calculate how to get this knight escape, because I'm sure that it was possible to find a way of how to save, and maybe instead of rook h5 he could play better. From this game, we at least know that Ding doesn't play well when he is low on time, and maybe this is what Gukesh can use next time. However, the next three games are drawing. Well, this game, we can go through it quickly. I don't really want to analyze it. Bishop a3 was a very nice idea. Well, what's the purpose of this move? Most chess players would react with this, and after bishop f8, king f8, they would lose their castling privilege. But you can play knight bd7 and take on f8 with a knight. This exactly happened, after which the position becomes equal. Maybe black is maybe black lags a little with their development, but it's still fine. So knight c3. What I did like from this game is only this move, b4. Why b4 is so important? Here, white has flexible pawns on e3 and d2, and this pawn can go to d3 if needed. It may be needed in order to control the e4 square to prevent any counterplay like that. So if the pawn was already on d4, then knight e4 would be a very nice idea. One knight goes to e4, the other knight supports it, and white has almost no ideas of how to play for a win. Here, the key idea is to locate the knight on d4 and try to invade the enemy camp to f5 mainly. And because of that, because white wanted to make the position of the knight on d4 stable, they played b4 to prevent c5. So c6, knight d4, and queen b3. Knight goes to e5, a4. a5 would deserve attention. But I think Gukesh didn't want to play it because he didn't want to make this a weakness. Actually, here is c5, knight f3, take, and d4, it's a bit unclear. But b7 is a problematic pawn. That's why black probably didn't play a5. So it's hard to evaluate the consequences of this move. So rook c8, a5. Fine. So why a5? To be able to play a6 at a certain moment, or just to grab space. b6, knight f3. Instead of this move, bishop a6 would deserve attention. Rook c7, f4, knight moves there, and maybe something like that. These pieces look weird, right? So this knight doesn't have prospects. The bishop is a bad bishop. It's not attacking anything. And c6 is a weakness. That was a chance for white to play for a win. But looks like he completely missed it, and I'm sure he didn't even take it into account. So he played this, which exchanged pieces and allowed black to play d4. So d4 is a very important move. If e takes d4 and queen takes d4, what can you say about the position? Yes, I agree with John. So not only better pieces positions, but also some disadvantages on the white's end. So the d2 is a main disadvantage. Typically, it's gonna be an isolated pawn, and usually when the pawn is on d4, it provides the player who has it with some activity with his pieces. But this time it can be blocked on d2, and it instead restricts enemy pieces. You always have the control over the d3 square, at least with your bishop. And your pieces will be stuck. So no extra space for white plus a weakness on d2. That position would be better for black. So that's why actually knight e2. And then it's a drawing position. So black tries to simplify, neutralize this bishop. So this move not taken on e4. Well, if they take on e4, the knight gets to e4, and probably there is a fork. The queen gets to a better square. There is nothing wrong with this pawn structure exchange because, well, the knight goes there, controls f5, and covers the king. And the pawn on f3 stops the enemy knight coming to e4 and g4. In other words, there is not much that white can do to take advantage of the g file being open. They just don't have pieces to attack. And even if they do have knight g3, and the knight may defend the king. So still knight g3 could make sense to make the position a little imbalanced. Instead, they dried the position. They draw the position out. So exchanged minor pieces, exchanged the knights. The position became absolutely drawing. H3 in escape square, C5, and then after the exchange of the pawns, well, it's a passed pawn, but it's so easy to make a blockade of this pawn with rook C4, so that's why there is nothing to talk about. It's time to agree to a draw in this exact position, but correct me if I'm mistaken, it seems that it's not permitted to offer a draw before move 40. Am I right? It's either a draw by repetition. Yeah, it should be a draw by a repetition if it's the game under 40 moves. Because usually this rule is applied in such matches. I didn't check the reglement of this or the regulations of this exact World Championship match, but I think the draw is not allowed to be offered within the first 40 moves. Okay, so this is where both players agreed to a draw already, but they made a few more moves, and yeah, then there was a repetition. Okay, so yeah, let me just close this topic for Bente Juy. Well, I see the problem. So you are in Spain and you don't have a job. I unfortunately I cannot help you to get a job from chess.com. I'm not affiliated with them. So you can write them yourself if you want, but you'd better look for a job in Spain or in other Spanish speaking countries. So I'm not sure if chess.com, well, if you apply and they didn't answer, probably they think that there is a person who suits such a job better. So unfortunately, I cannot help you with it, and you have to decide it on your own. So here at the webinars, we are trying to learn something, and I'm trying to help people better understand chess and better and improve their ability to calculate, to become better players. Or maybe I just explain some interesting things related to chess, but we are definitely not offering jobs here. So sorry, I cannot help you with a job, especially in Spanish. Okay, games 5 and 6 are more interesting, in my opinion. Well, first of all, because it was the exchange variation of French defense this time, and White tried to play it for a win. Because it's well, I was a French defense player with black pieces when I was younger, and I hated when white exchanged because it was very hard to play for a win. This is a very drawing position. Well, if black wants to play for a win, probably they have to do bishop d6, knight e7 plan with the ability of bishop f5 to be played. So knight f6, bishop d3, and c5. Well, some of my students played for white, and there is a chance to play for a win with bishop d3 in some variations. But again, if black knows it, if black plays properly, they can equalize. But anyway, the task is to get the position imbalanced. So if you see that this is the position with symmetrical pawn structure and you want to play for a win, what you can do? If it's a Russian game, for example, you usually have several or one or several extra tempi, and you use this tempi to develop some initiative. This position, in this position, you don't have actually extra tempi. You have only one tempo. And then your task is to make the position more imbalanced so that your opponent can get confused. Okay, c5, c3. Well, I would castle here, and after c4, check. Bishop blocks, bishop goes there, because after castle, I can successfully undermine the pawn on c4. So they can, of course, play b5, and actually it's a homework for you, how to play against b5. But typically they take there, a takes, and then after c4, well, I have the open file, and, well, I would prefer playing it for white, but it's still approximately equal. So knight c6, for example, c4, if they take, it's great, but of course they won't. What I have here is the open file, and a7 is potentially under the attack in the endgame. It may matter. Right now, it's not a big issue for black. So, but Gukesh didn't play it. So he prepared c3. Okay, c3, even with the idea of keep the bishop on this diagonal, doesn't provide white with enough advantage here. Also, there was other thing I wanted to show you. What about bishop g5? Who knows this line? So h6, what do you think white can do in order to play for a win? Okay, yeah, queen e2. Queen e2 comes, c5, well, it's white to move. So queen e2, yes, what's the purpose of this move? Well, if bishop is7, then we ruin their pawn structure. So, well, it doesn't mean obligatory that white is winning there. No, but you ruin the pawn structure, you imbalance the position, and you may have some ideas of how to play for a win. Same thing happens with the queen. If queen is 7, queen e2, bishop e2, g takes f6, or actually g takes f6 right away, well, it's still the pawn structure doesn't look good, and white has a chance to play for a win. It doesn't obligatory mean that white will win, but at least they get some chances. Well, bishop e7, queen e7 doesn't work, but bishop e6 works. However, after bishop e6, you have a check on b5, which allows you to win the pawn on b7. But this is not, well, it's a poison pawn. Queen c7, for example. Bishop g4, adding pressure there. Actually, what about this move? Oh, it's simply bishop d6. I just forgot that it's protected. And after this, there is a check, and then bishop takes queen. So bishop e2, bishop d6, queen takes 3 extra pawns already. But castle, knight c3, and actually this position doesn't look good, knight b6, because what? If castle kingside, then black wins a piece. How does black win a piece in this position? Who can tell me? What do you mean c5? It's black to move. How black wins a piece in this position? So 95, I don't see the point. Well, it's actually, yeah, it's still black to move. Okay, so g takes f3. Well, it probably means bishop takes f3. No, well, no, bishop takes f3 is just a simple way. Uh-huh. Okay, so I see what John suggests. We can discuss it. Bishop takes f3 and queen f4. And then in order to save, they have to play this move. Because trying something like that to let the king escape, it's likely to be a blunder. So rook, yeah, rook just here. No, then g3, queen f3, rook takes e8, rook takes e8, queen b6. No, 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 no. Okay, rook e1, then it's queen h2, king f1, check, king e2, and well, and then rook e8. And after this move, it's a check on f4, and then the rook is lost. Yeah, because this bishop still protects on b8. Okay, so that simple way. If Okay, so if instead of castle kingside they castled queenside, then it's similar to what John suggested: rook e8, rook b8, and if queen c6, it's bishop f4, winning the queen. If knight d5, well, with the idea of exchanging the knights, it's just queen d8. And there is still a problem with this queen, which doesn't have squares. For example, after this move, you just take on d5, and there is a discovered attack. So it's hard to castle. That's why even with so many extra pawns, the position is considered to be better for black. That's why bishop g5 line no longer becomes popular. Well, maybe we'll see it again in this World Championship match if Gukesh prepares, because I'm not 100% sure that Ding knows it. He is not a French defense player, so he's not so experienced with it. He may find and understand that there is something wrong with queen b5 and queen takes b7, but who knows? Well, he played French defense as a child. Well, yes, but not when he was a strong grandmaster already, so still not sure if he knows it. So bishop d3, c5, c3, and this is what happened, queen e7. Well, they exchanged, and after that the position became boring. It seems that white is slightly better, but actually no. Black's position is solid enough, and because the pawn structure is symmetrical, there is no attacking, there is no potential for white to play for a win. Well, b3 would provide him with such a potential. So b3, bishop e6, not b5, because b5 can be undermined with a4, but bishop e6. Bishop e6, take, take, and maybe here white would have better chances. Castle, rook e8, rook e1, so the king is still on the e file, but white has no development. Bishop g5, knight bd7, knight bd2. Uh, yeah, knight h4, knight f5. So knight h4 could provoke g6, and then with g3 and improving the knight, maybe to e3 actually, there was a possibility to pressure d5. At least a very, very small chance to create problems. But after knight bd2, it seems so obvious. So I have no ideas why Gukesh chose the exchange variation of French defense if he didn't create any problems. Oh, g4. Okay, nice move actually. This move shows that he wants to play for a win. He's not ready for well, he doesn't agree for a draw. So this move is actually a common idea here, right? But after knight takes and then bishop c5, it seems that black has better pieces. Because g5 can be played. Knight f4 is coming. Maybe just knight f1 and knight e3 could make sense. g4. Okay, knight f4. Bishop g3. He creates a pin. This and g5 to ruin the pawn structure. Well, actually, it ruins his own pawn structure. And knight h3 doesn't work. So if knight h3, king f1, then let's say bishop takes. Here, what do you think white should do? If they take the bishop back, it's just knight takes g5, and it seems black wins the pawn. Is there a compensation? Or maybe white should play something else? Mm. No, well, it's still extra pawn, and extra pawn can be a lot in such a game, even if even with a symmetrical pawn structure, and even if this pawn is doubled. So here he could take on h6, because if now the bishop goes to the safe place, it's h7, and nothing can stop this pawn from a promotion. So that's why actually after this move, g takes h6 is a must, and then h takes g3. And this time white is better. They have a counterplay here. So that's why knight h3 didn't work. So he just simply took on g5. Knight takes g5, bishop d7, knight goes there to go to e5. He later did it. Bishop takes, pawn takes, the knight is hanging now, and it goes to d3. Well, what was the purpose of that? So I also think that Ding Liren was playing for win too, and he wanted that position with bishops of opposite color. Now we need to swap the knights off, and c4 is a very good square to do it, because b3 to stop knight c4 makes this a serious weakness. That's why f3, knight c4, and after this exchange, white has a pass pawn on d3, but of course, if the rooks are exchanged, it's a complete draw. So rook e4, this is the critical moment of the game. There was a possibility for Ding to play for a win, mainly because of his pawn structure, because the pawn is on d3. d2 means rook d4, and he doesn't get any achievements because of that move. So what would you suggest? Bishop f5. Okay, bishop f5. What if I just take there? d2. Okay. Bishop f5. I take there. You go d2. I play this move. So rook d8 is not possible. So probably in this position, you have to play rook d8 first. And then, yes, you win. But maybe I just play rook d4 to stop you from doing it, then bring my king, and then take there. Bishop f5 did make sense, but the move that black would better play was this, bishop e6. What's the difference? So in the game, he played bishop c6, and then it was rook d4, and later he lost this pawn. The idea of this move is that the bishop may protect the pawn, and it doesn't interfere with the c file, and it's possible to relocate the rook to c5, from which it attacks the pawn on e5, as well as pressures the pawns on the queen side. So this is where he could play for a win, but he played bishop c6, and this plan no longer works. And there is no other file to let the rook to come to the queen side. So, but looks like this move wins a pawn. Yes, it does, but it doesn't win the game. Again, bishop h5 would be a possible move here to control the d1 square. For example, well, if this, it's game over because of d1. If this, then b5 supporting, b3, rook c8, and maybe, well, it's still a draw, but maybe if white makes several mistakes, black could win. But after bishop c6, it's just a dead draw. Rook d8, rook d4, they exchanged, and what? So the number of pawns is equal. We have bishops of opposite color, so no chances. They played a few more moves, repeated the position. Even without a pawn, it's still a draw because of this blockade. That's it. So this is the game that Ding actually could win. If only he came up with that plan of bishop e6 and rook c5, rook c8, rook c5. So this is the critical moment. If only bishop e6 in this position and this plan, which not only protects the pawn but allows to attack these two, he could have real chances to win. Well, so it seems that he is not so good with French, and because he doesn't have experience playing it in the top level, he doesn't know some of the typical ideas. But good news is that Gukesh is not as experienced in French defense too, so that's why um, they are in equal situation. Well, we'll see. I'm sure there will be some not drawing games in the nearest future. Let's see. We have the last game to analyze and to make a conclusion. But before we proceed with the last game, let me actually share something with you. So finally, I'm glad to share that we are about to start our group lessons. So we'll master chess tactics and strategy. Finally, everything is working. We decided to change the date. So we're starting from the 9th of December. So this is the link for you. There will be 24 lessons. Each lesson is 1 hour and 30 minutes. They are live, but if you miss it, you get a recording and the homework. So the date we start is the 9th of December. And yeah, this is the plan. If you want to check, so this is what I'm going to explain on these two classes per week. So in these two classes, for example, I'll be talking about forcing moves, about some decision-making process, and also about pieces coordination, and so on. So these are the topics we are going to cover. I'm your coach and pricing, so you can enroll right now. If you click here, so there are two options to pay the whole amount. It's $220. It's a little discount. If you pay the whole amount immediately, you can use PayPal or credit card. If here it's 79, So it's 3 months. It's written 2, but it's 3 months. Here you can only pay by your credit or debit card. Everything works, so you may enroll it. And we are going to start on Monday, not tomorrow, but on the week after, the 9th of December. It will be Zoom meetings where I'm going to share the screen and explain following the topic. All materials for the first few lessons are already prepared. For the first 6, I think. The rest I'm going to prepare during the process, because it takes 3 months, and this is mainly for chess players under 1700. So it's definitely helpful for players from 12 to 15, but any player from 1000 to 1700 will benefit of these courses, of these group lessons, I mean. They're gonna be in the form of webinars, plus the recording, homework, some discussion, maybe some of your games will be analyzed too, in order to learn by mistakes, or for example see very good examples of how you got better pieces coordination and so on. Okay, so this is one thing. The second thing, again, if you want to support my webinars, there is still an option to do it by clicking this link and by clicking this donated button. So the link is here. Again, it's a very simple process. You click the button, you enter the amount that you want to donate, and click PayPal. So, then enter your account. So you see it's in Spanish because I'm in Argentina. You enter your PayPal account, and then the money are automatically delivered to my PayPal account. Fine. So this and this. So I'm glad to see everyone in our group lessons. So this is what I wanted to start several years ago, but only now I think we can do it. And well, I have time for group classes, and I'm sure I have a lot of knowledge that I can share with you, and you can become a better chess player. Yeah, Brian, if you want, you can share what you want. Okay, let me take a look at your questions. So, what do we have here? Yeah, also this link. Okay, fine. Okay, Brian shares a nice position. Yeah, let me set it up on the board. Sorry, guys, for a little off top, but I'm sure you'll find it very interesting. Rook h5. Let me set it on the board. A5. Yeah, guys, if you have anything else to share, you're welcome. If I find it somehow related to our topic today, or at least interesting, I will put it on the board. So a6, white to move, white plays and wins. Yeah, maybe we can do a warm-up puzzle. Had a game which I found very interesting. Yes, you can share, but let's actually do it next class. So email me to tricksofchess@gmail.com with a PGN and with some explanation why you think that this is an interesting game. So white to move, what do you think? How does white win? The queen is trapped, which is a good point. But the problem is that if you decide to remaneuver, they're gonna take on e5, and then, well, let's say rook h1, f takes e5. Then if you, let's say, bring the rook, for example, here to b1, then h6, and the king escapes, but the e pawn becomes a passed pawn. So let me share. A rook h1 take, a rook b1, let's say, h6, and after this check, it's completely fine for black because they promote first. Okay, so John, you're a strong chess player, rook h6, and it's actually a Zugzwang. Because what they can do, e takes f6 is coming. They have to play with this pawn because this is the only piece that can move. For example, they take, you do that, and then you promote with a checkmate. There is nothing they can do. You h5, check. Oops. Sorry. I didn't mean to promote to a knight. First f6 to chase the king away, and then how do we play here? Let's decide. G takes h5. No, it's actually already a draw. I missed something. Oh, yeah, in this position. So you don't have to play f7 first. You have to play this move. Why this? Because it stops king g6. So after, let's say, well, they still have no moves, h6, f7, and then f8. And, well, let's say king h7, it's f8, queen takes, king takes, and now it's just a winning position. You promote. If they play king g7, then f6, and the king is forced to go there, and then f8. So the queens are exchanged anyway. So rook h6 works. If they don't take it, it's basically the same. Take and f7 coming. Fine. So the last game, the game ended in a draw. Ding was playing with white pieces against Gukesh, and the game started with d4. So they had knight f3, they had f4, now it's d4. And London system. So e6, well, c5. So my recommendation, play c5 here. I have a course on Chessable about how to defeat London system in, well, this concrete position. This is where I offer c5 to keep the opportunity for the bishop to get developed. So this course has so high ratings. So it's 4-6 or 4-8. It's a very high. So people like it. This is, well, in my opinion, this is the best way to play against London system. And some of these ideas are used by top grandmasters. The main expert is Matthias Blubaum, the German grandmaster. Okay, yeah, thanks, Brian. I'll take a look at this position later, but let's continue. So c5, how does it work? Let's say c3, knight c6, knight f3, and you have queen b6 to put pressure on the pawn. b3 makes a permanent weakness on c3. Doing queen b3 move means c4, and then after the queen exchange, we have the plan of advancing the pawn to b4. We have the a file. A2 is always a problem for white, and then bishop f5, so black doesn't experience any issues. For example, knight a3 with knight b5 idea doesn't bother us at all, because after this move, just rook goes there. And knight c7 is just a check, which makes no sense. The knight can even get trapped there. Fine. So if, let's say, they do not take but move there, it's bishop here, and they cannot take it because of queen b2. And this time they cannot trap our queen on a1. So they will have to play this move. And doesn't it look great for black? Black achieved a lot. They grabbed space. They have no problems with pieces development. Why chess players? Well, why not all chess players play my strategy? So a lot of strong chess players do, but some still don't. Maybe they just are not familiar. Okay, e6 blocks the bishop. It's still possible to equalize, but this is a very important disadvantage. And it actually provides white a chance to play Queen's Gambit. Because if you play c5, then c4 makes no sense. It's a weird move bishop f4, because it's better to have the knight on c3 or the knight on f3 rather than the bishop on f4. Okay, e6, knight f3, c5. So he still does c5, but this time it doesn't look so good. Bishop d6 and bishop b5, a very specific move. Black would love to exchange the bishops, but they don't play such a move because of bishop d6. And after bishop b5, it's bishop c5. So black loses a pawn. That's why they have to block it with knight c6. Bishop c6, pawn takes. This is what Ding had in mind. So Ding understood that there is no advantage for white in London. However, there is one variation that he prepared, and maybe black makes a mistake there because of some misunderstanding. That was his hope. So bishop d6, queen d6, queen a4. Well, he is not adding pressure, but the move has queen a3 in mind. Castle and queen a3. Well, you may not castle. You may play c4, but what's the purpose of c4? So typically we have to take and then use our other pawn to undermine, which allows us with a strong pawn center. So c4 doesn't make sense. C takes d4 does. C takes d4, castle. Castle, this is completely fine. Your only task is to get rid of the weakness, which is not an easy task actually. But castle is fine. And after queen e3, there is still a way of how to avoid problems. It's knight e4. Knight d2. Well, knight f d2. Why not the b knight to d2? Who can tell me? C takes d4, right. The queen is under attack, so there is no knight to take, and nobody wants to take with a pawn on a3. So queen d6, knight takes d6, c takes d4, and this position looks fine. So c6 is still a weakness, but instead there is a counterplay. So like that, and bishop a6. For example, rook c1, rook fc8, and then you cannot castle, so you can block, but it's so difficult to bring the second rook to pressure. Even if it's possible, just rook b6 defense. I had a similar pawn structure in one of my games. My position was worse, but a little, and even after losing such a pawn, I was able to draw the game. So instead, Gukesh plays the best move, e5. That's the reason why this knight goes. And Gukesh plays the best move, e5. Knight e4, d takes e4. He sacrifices the pawn, but has a counterplay here with queen g6. How can you defend the pawn? Well, this is not playable. This makes sense, but still is not playable because of this move. Not because of bishop h3, because bishop h3 attacks only f1, but bishop a6 attacks e2 and f1. For example, after this move, you can continue with this, and in future, you may consider this. For example, especially after knight d2, queen g4, and it seems like it is a problem because no chance to castle, so probably f3, take, then castle, but it doesn't look good. So rook f8 at the very least. Okay, fine. So g3 would be a mistake. That's why this pawn has to be sacrificed. And of course, white here wants to castle to the queen side, what he does, but sacrifices the other pawn. D takes a5, rook b8. Yes, now the knight is pinned, and the rook also may do this, may pressure b2. This is a very helpful move, and that's the reason why knight c4 has to be played. defending there and preparing rook d2. So black has the material is equal here, but black has some initiative, and white has to prevent the black's activity here. Bishop e6, rook d2, queen f3, and rook e1 defending there. Well, what do you think black should do in this position? And did you watch this game? Maybe you remember the move that was played. Who can tell me? Rook c8, then rook b5. Yeah, it does make sense. Rook c8. I agree. Rook c8. But now the problem is that the knight can move. So what if they play this? It stops this move, and it seems everything is protected. a2. Well, right now it's c8 hanging. So if you play rook c7, then bishop a2, it's a poisoned pawn because of queen a5, which is a double attack. So I think it's actually a very good decision to take this knight with a bishop, because it could invade into the enemy camp and prevent the black piece's activity. So queen c4, queen f5. Well, again, maybe just exchanging this rook was a good idea, or just doing something like that. But queen f5, attacking the pawn. Queen c6, queen e5, and after queen d5, again, the position is about to get simplified. They repeat it. And, well, if this, it's likely to be a draw. So black wanted to play for a win, played queen h4, which is not a good move, but it's still a very drawing position. g6, queen e5. Again, it seems that there is a threat, but everything is under the control, and black may develop initiative too. So rook goes there, queen goes here, and well, exchanging here was a good idea actually. H takes g4, then this is a weakness. Say rook d5, rook d5, f5. And it seems that these pawns are faster than the white's activity on that side. However, even there, it's likely that the game ends in a draw. Anyway, so queen h5 was played, queen f4. Well, now it's under attack. Some counterplay to take on h2. This, queen f3 defending on e4. King c2, well, they exchanged, and well, this is a drawing position. With two rooks, it's very hard to play for a win if you don't have any other material advantage. h4, e3, and well, white is slightly worse, but their position has enough drawing potential. They cannot move this rook because of e2. So h5, g takes h5, rook d5, trying to attack there, but this rook has to stay. h4, rook f5, and yeah, king g7 was played. This is a critical moment of the game. So white doesn't have any winning chances, and their task here is only to draw the game. Why? Let me show you. For example, if white decides, let's say, to promote a4, then it's king h6, so let's say a5, then it's h3. And the problem is that this move means that e2 and the pawn is promoted. So maybe rook g5 can be played, but then it's rook e3 can be played. So it's protected. There is no way to deliver a checkmate. And if instead white tries to attack this pawn, then black can activate their king like that. And if this rook is tied down, so here they have some winning chances. That's why what white should do is to repeat the position, which did happen in the game, and that's why the game ended in a draw. So it was just a repetition. And if, let's say, the king goes to h6, it's still a draw. So rook f6. Oh, it's actually a win. It's rook g5 mate. No, the king h6 would be a mistake. So king h8 was a must, and this is how the game ended in a draw. So it seems that in approximately equal opening, in approximately equal positions after playing the opening stage of the game, both players are looking for chances to play for a win, but they are not as good as Magnus Carlsen. That's why they are missing it, and that's why the game mainly ends in a draw. However, we'll see what happens in the seventh game. And well, that's all for today. What I want you to do is to enroll in my group classes, which we are going to start in a week and 1 day, uh, which I'm sure you can benefit of. Unfortunately, today we have only a few participants. Maybe it's because of the problems of the email. Not everyone received it. Anyway, I'll try to fix it so that everyone receives an email about the next webinar. If you have any ideas of which topic to suggest, you are welcome, but the next one will be not devoted to this match. We will talk about something else. Not sure exactly what, but I'll prepare a very exciting content for you. Maybe something tactical. Fine. So we are done for today. That's all. That's all. Do you have any questions? By the way, one more thing I wanted to ask. Yeah. So what if I do two more streams? Let's say how I play Title Tuesday on Tuesday. And I'm also going to do a stream on Thursday of how I play, of how I solve puzzles. So I will do take puzzles from chess.com and solve them in live so that you can learn the way I'm thinking. So if you are interested in it, please let me know. If you want, I can send you a reminder, and if you're ready, you can join. Not sure that we need a Zoom meeting for that, but we can just do it through Twitch, for example. So yeah, any questions are welcome. You can message me to tricksofchess@gmail.com. Um, mhm. So I will let you know about future streams, but if there is nothing else planned, we meet next Sunday, same time. See you then. Bye bye.